Welcome to That's a Hard No, the podcast about learning to say no and set boundaries to live our best lives. I'm your host, Heather Drago. You may think, because of this podcast, that I'm a boundary setting expert, but I'm not. I'm an expert at struggling to set boundaries. But you know what? I'm working on it, and it is getting easier. Follow along with me as I learn from fellow strugglers and experts so that you too can start saying no without feeling fear, guilt, or FOMO.
You don't know where to go. Unfriendly applications got you feeling low. You're not sure what to do. Weight of expectations is coming down on you. There's a phrase you should know. Tastes so much sweeter than hello. That's a hard no.
I'm here with my two pals, the Jens, Jenn Prochaska and Jen Bauer. Jen Bauer is the owner of Joop Art Studio and is the best designer I know. And Jenn Prochaska is the owner of The Right Difference, and she's the best writer I know. So I like to rope them into everything I do, and guess what? They're here again. So we're going to talk about our book club book, Just Do Nothing by Joanna Hardis, who was on last week. And we're so blessed to know Joanna because of you, Jen. You introduced her to us. So we got to know her. She's been on 3 times now. And I know that you were kind of behind the scenes, a little bit instrumental in helping this book come to life. So I guess, kind of, maybe, sort of.
I encouraged.
Yeah. So tell us what you know. What's the goss?
What's the real scoop?
Yeah, tell us.
No,
Tell
tea.
us.
Give
about
it the tea.
Yeah, there
Give
you
it the
go.
tea, yes. No, yeah, Joanna Hardis has been a client of mine for 5+ years. She was one of my first clients as I was building my business, and she had just gone out on her own in her own practice.
Mm-hmm.
So we've gotten to learn a lot about owning our own business together. But, you know, in just hearing her throughout the years, I've written a couple websites for her, and I help with some of her other content, really just drawing out her expertise. You know, I would say, like, you could write a book, and, you know, oh, I have nothing more to say. I have nothing to say. Nobody would want to hear it. I'm like, I disagree, but
Isn't
okay.
that true of all of us? We all have this imposter syndrome where we're like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Yes, you do.
Yeah, and she talks about that on some of the other episodes that she's done. And I think a lot of it is just because it's so innate to us that we think, well, doesn't everybody know what we know, right? And as a writer, one of my top priorities is to pull that stuff that you think we all know out, because we don't. I mean, we just can't, right? So, again, over the years, she would say these things, and I'm like, that's brilliant. And she's like, really? It's so simple. And I'm like, yes. So all I did was say, you have a lot to say. The book came from her. You know, she at one point said, well, I'm writing a book. And I was like, well, that's fantastic. You know, I wasn't entirely sure of the direction. I was just like, great, whatever it is will be fantastic. And it is. And so, yeah, I think she has a second book in her. And of course, now she's like, I have nothing more to say. And I was like, I don't think so you do, you know, but yeah, we'll see. But no, this
Was
is
it
a
the
great
book you expected?
No, I mean, I had no expectations. I knew, you know, whatever she wrote would be great. But no, this book starts off with a very personal experience where she was ghosted, as you guys know, by a relationship, and that was the springboard for the book. And getting this personal is new for her, and she talks about that, right? And all through the book, she has little personal anecdotes, which just help remind us that she's human too, and that she's been through a lot of this. So yeah, no, I had no expectations. Yeah, it's just a great book.
I was surprised by that. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I know you and I have talked about struggling to read self-help books, sometimes they're very dry and very clinical, and it's hard to relate to, and it just is a slog to try to read through them. And I found myself whipping through this because I just found it very endearing and relatable, and like, who hasn't had some of these weird, awkward relationship things happen? And I really appreciated her being so vulnerable and sharing that stuff, because she really digs into like true anxieties and what she was feeling and moments of panic, and I just really appreciated that.
I think that's where I am able to get the most information, is when it's a story. Like it's a person's story. Like, I mean, I can read the science or the technical or the technique or that you're supposed to follow, but sometimes it's like, blah, blah, you know, it doesn't go in. But like reading when it's related to somebody's story, it just helps. Like, oh yeah, I could imagine that in my scenario too, or you know, something like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very much when you talk to Joanna, like that's comes through in the book, right?
Oh yeah, you can hear her voice.
Yeah, for sure. And she's got her wit and her smart alecky, you know, when appropriate there. And I mean, most of the chapters are titled with these memes that you see.
I
right?
love those.
Yes, I think it's funny.
I like that she says right up front, I hate these things.
She
I
does.
hate this like toxic positivity. So I'm going to play with it, and we're going to head the titles this way, or head the no, what's the word?
Head the chapters.
Head the chapters this way.
Title the
Thank you.
chapters. Yeah.
This is why I hire a writer. Yeah, and they're priceless. They're just so funny, and I really appreciate it. So one of the things that I really like about this is, you know, you guys know my story because I've been preaching it to you before there was ever a podcast, is this whole repetition and learning from practice and stuff. Any takes on that as far as like, you know, building these new neural pathways and not reacting when you have anxiety, which is the premise of I guess we should back up. The premise of the book, if you haven't already listened to the interview with Joanna, is that, help me out here, Jen, is that when you're feeling anxiety or uncomfortable, often our behavior is based on us trying to not feel that way. And so
Quick fix it.
Yeah, fix
avoid
it, address it, avoid it,
yeah.
something, right? And so then her advice is to not do anything, just to sit with it and kind of sit into it or like feel it.
Something that I was waiting for it to show up in the book, thinking that maybe she had heard it or said it, but this quote, I don't even know who it's from, but it was "Embrace the suck."
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, that's it.
We had Terry like early on, like he was a cancer patient. We actually titled his episode "Embrace the Suck" because he you know, he was like, this is I'm gonna die of cancer. This is a thing I have, and I'm gonna embrace this, even the terrible moments, because I'm getting something out of it.
Yeah.
And that's a good.
Yeah, instead of trying to fix it or, you know, just kind of live through it and figure it out as you're going, like, yeah, it's interesting. I think the whole concept of the book to me is different or interesting because there's so many things right now based around setting boundaries and stop doing things you don't like to do, and, you know, like, you know, here's your things that you are allowing to have happen. And some of them, I mean, I'm not saying that there's not a good thing with boundaries, but I feel like it's kind of the opposite of that, where you're like, well, you're, no, but I mean, you're setting a different boundary of that. But it's just boundary to me is such a
it can be overused.
Totally. And I feel like sometimes it's used to be like, oh, well, then I don't have to do this. You know what I mean? Where it's like, well, maybe you should. You know, it's kind of like, if you really want to do the end goal, you have to kind of live through the hard parts. It's not just going to be, or, you know, like she's different scenarios where she's like, you know, it's hard and you have to start with number 3 instead of number 10. That was interesting too.
Yeah, and the funny thing, I even said this to Joanna, is that like I went about reading this thinking, I don't have anxiety. I'm fine. I've got this figured out. I'm going to read this and it's going to help so many people and I'm going to be able to relate to my family members. And then I started reading it and I was like, oh, okay, I do that and I do this. And I'm realizing it is a lot of the boundary issues I have is because I don't want to feel uncomfortable and I don't want people to be uncomfortable with me.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that this is not a book for people only with anxiety disorders.
Right.
Like, this is a book where, I mean,
Anybody.
we all have anxiety. Anxiety is this is something I've
we
learned
all have
from
moments where we're uncomfortable.
Anxiety is a normal emotion, just like happiness and sadness, right? But for some reason, because it's uncomfortable, we want to avoid it, right? So let it go or slay the whole, you know, whatever. And what this book says is anxiety is normal. When you hit that point of discomfort, depending on what you're trying to achieve, she gives you tools how to continuously progress toward what you're trying to achieve while the discomfort is there.
Right.
Right? So many people, especially now, it's like at the end of January, New Year's resolutions, like she talks about those in here. She hates New Year's resolutions. Not because she's not for change, but because they're usually these big, sweeping, sexy, I'm going to lose 30 pounds in a day, whether I need to or not, right? As opposed to, well, first of all, is that a realistic goal? Is this the time in your life where that goal is actually achievable, right? Which as a mom of young kids, I really appreciate because, I want to slay the whole damn day, but sometimes my kid gets sick, right?
Right.
And the whole day is gone.
And maybe I'll slay in 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
TBD on the slaying. Or maybe when they're in high school, I'll start to slay the whole damn day. I don't know.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And for me, it's really helped me because either way, whether I'm resenting the child being sick or resenting the work that has to get done, I'm living in this resentment. Whereas, you know what, this is uncomfortable. What can I do? What is legit? And, what do I need to do? And then just be.
Yeah.
Well, you're still slaying. It's
You
just
are.
you're slaying. You're just slaying what your
Great
child
point.
needs.
Yeah.
That's so true. And sometimes slaying is surviving. I mean, especially, when you first, new moms or dads, anybody with an infant, like, dude, are you guys being fed, clothed, and, everyone's doing all right? Then that's slaying. I can't tell you how many times people would say to me, Jen, this is a time of your life, right? Like, adjust your expectations. So even her saying that, I think provides some people relief because, especially for those of us who might be type A, we're constantly trying to achieve. It's like, okay, let's be human for a little bit. Let's acknowledge so that we don't get into this cycle of I'm a failure, I suck, I'm no good, I'm never this.
Yeah, and I think it just helped me realize that, like, we all have the tendency to not react mindfully to how we're feeling, but to just, we kind of have reflexes that we've learned, either to avoid or to counteract or whatever. And so I like her advice to, like, intentionally take a moment and actually recognize what you're feeling. I am feeling anxiety. I am feeling sadness. I am feeling rejected. Whatever it is, I think you name it is a very powerful tool.
Mm-hmm. I think that something that I kind of thought after reading the book was having to be very self-aware. Mm-hmm. And that's something that not everybody is, or in moments you're not, and you can look back at it and you're like, oh, that's my reaction or whatever. But that some of these things and the techniques that she talks about, you have to be self-aware. And even she uses examples of people that, she can see it clearly, but the person is not thinking this is them at all until they have several sessions with her or things like that, where it's like, well, like, are you going to be able to read a book and figure it all out by yourself? It's like, I almost feel like after reading it, like, wow, it would be really helpful to have sessions with somebody to help me figure out, like,
yeah.
But you have to be very
Outside
self-aware. You
perspective.
have to be very, like you said, take a moment back and be like, okay, why am I reacting this way? What is causing me to feel this way? And how can I work my way through it and not give up on what I'm trying to achieve?
Yeah, at the same time, one of my favorite parts is she's like, don't get caught up in the why. Because I get caught up in the why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What is the underlying reason? Why? And then that will, like, solve everything for me. But that's a rabbit hole unto itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm, like, down here in the why, not up here in the just keep going, right? So, yeah, it's tricky.
Well, it's like the zoom out, zoom in thing where she talks about, sometimes you have to take a step back and look at it differently. And then other times you have to hyper focus on something. And maybe even within the same scenario that you have to do both, but just at different levels of how you're feeling at the moment. So
yeah, I like her whole approach to mindfulness and taking a step and looking at things. And I find I'm one of those people that I react quickly, whether it's, oh, I want you to like me, or it's, oh, I'll do this thing for you, or it's, I've made the decision and I'm going to do it. And so I'm really trying to be more slow down and kind of, do I really want to do this? I'm not going to make a decision right away. I won't respond right away with my feedback. Like, I want to sit with it for a minute. And so I'm finding that's helpful. So
I could do more of that. I tend to react as well.
yeah,
too.
I mean, and lots of people have come on this podcast and they've talked about, in the moment, we all kind of fall back onto our reflexes,
Fight or
right?
flight kicks in.
Right? And so, that moment to take a pause, take a breath, think about it, say, can I get back to you? I think now if I could just apply that to like when I'm feeling something, then we'll be getting somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and that's where her idea of, tolerating your distress tolerance, right?
Right.
So it's like a muscle, you build it. And she's got little ways of practicing. And I just love that. Like I don't have to wait for the big moment, right? And even the exercises that she has. I mean, there's some distress in writing, in answering her questions. What is your why? Like your real why, not the why that
You tell everyone else.
that you tell everybody. Like, right. What's your like real why?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
don't judge that.
Yeah.
Right? So you get to practice in her exercises, you can practice that distress in a safe place because it's just you and your pen and
Right.
paper.
Right. And so what we haven't said in the sort of setup to all this is like those reflexes, those things we fall back on, what she says is those become your problem, right? That those can end up in the resulting behavior or, whatever it is that ends up being disruptive to your life or your relationships. And so,
Shopping.
shopping,
Picking up the Amazon or doom scrolling or, for some, eating or, certainly
shutting down
drinking
and walking away from
Yeah.
someone and not continuing the conversation. I mean, there's, slamming the door, I'm out, whatever it is.
And there's so many
avoidant
influencers out there, and she says this all the time, who'll say, well, this is the way to avoid anxiety. And it's like, well, first of all, we don't want to avoid anxiety. And second of all, okay, so now you're not going to be able to live life unless you have your special bracelet that you sit here and go like this with. You know what I mean? Like, and that's
and the
That's the
oils
thing.
and the
yeah.
oil.
Yeah.
Like, then
Yeah.
you have to come with all this stuff, and like you said, those become the problem. It's like, well,
Yeah.
now I want to get off essential
Right.
oils.
And I also think we have to all accept, like, sometimes life sucks.
Absolutely.
Being a human being is hard, and we're not guaranteed to feel happy all the time. And I feel like, and I say this all the time, like we have this FOMO thing where we see other people on social media and they're presenting their best life, a version of their life, which is a story they're telling, a narrative they're creating, and we think, well, they're all happy, I should be happy, and why aren't I happy, and why isn't my life perfect, and why is my house full of dirty dishes and laundry, and there's something wrong with me.
Yes. Even for I would consider myself fairly secure, but there are times when I will be scrolling on social media and those thoughts start creeping in and I don't even realize they're there. And I'm like, oh, well, their post looks perfect because the camera's right here. Their dishes are right there. And I'm looking at all of it. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I was joking with my eldest kid, my son, who works for the company, and we work out of my house, right? And then everyone else works virtually. And I was like, we should write a job description like amenities include the upstairs toilet backs up, piles of laundry, dog hair, just because
Right.
it's like so
That's real life.
imperfect, it's just the way life is sometimes, and you just have to sometimes you have to be okay in the mess, not let that be the thing that drives you crazy. So
Yeah, for sure.
the mess of life, that's sort of the metaphor I'm going with. I also like the part where she talks about we tell ourselves stories, and sometimes we talk ourselves into things or out of things and tell ourselves we can't do things. And so sometimes you just have to create a story and
Jump in.
and kind of make a new story. And I always tell or give the example of when I started my nonprofit many years ago. I had to start speaking in public and meeting the governor and going down to the state house and all this stuff that I'd never done before. And I, previously, if I had to stand up in front and talk in front of people, I would turn red and
I know
I'd be
that
feeling
all
the
so well.
anxiety and get all hot and I would blank out and so, but I had to get over it. Because my why was I have this mission I wanted to accomplish. And so I started this thing where I'd sit in my car and kind of psych myself out beforehand. And I'd be like, today, the role of Heather Drago is going to be played by Heather Drago.
That's fantastic.
And I would be like, this Heather Drago is totally confident speaking for, I literally would put on a persona. And it got me through, and just by letting myself do that and going for it even when I felt uncomfortable, after a while, I became a pretty comfortable public speaker. you guys know, I can walk in a room, I'm like, hey, I'm Heather. So I think like those stories we tell ourselves, or those voices, those intrusive thoughts we hear in our heads about we can't do this or we can't do that, I think that's another muscle we have to build, is telling ourselves new stories. You're the storyteller, so although I know that's one of those phrases it's overused that you don't like, but
no, for sure.
What do you
though,
think?
No, it's key. I mean, so much. The phrase "living out loud" is coming to me right now. Like, so much of why I talk to people in my life, you know, is because so they can call me on those stories, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And you were talking about, it makes me want to go and, you know, have and somebody to talk to. And I mean, it doesn't have to be therapy. I mean, there are, you know, but it's helpful because someone else is going to hear my patterns. I'm not going to hear them. They're too intrinsic, right? Although some of her questions are designed to pull them out.
Right.
Right. But even as an entrepreneur, you know, we've had many discussions where I can say, okay, well, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And it's like, well, if you're always doing that, then, you know, you were complaining about that last month too. Like, maybe it's time to do something. Oh, I was? Oh, okay. Like, great.
Yeah.
I need that for sure.
I mean, how many times as business owners have different pairs of us had conversations about this thing is happening, how would you handle it? And then we start talking about these patterns we fall into, or these common themes we find ourselves in as business owners, or as working women or moms or whatever, right? Or people with spouses.
Right. Exactly. And that's where the boundary setting comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I've had several people in business, you know, say, but well, you need to set this boundary. Oh, I didn't know that was an opportunity, right?
I didn't know I could do that.
Right. And then they're like, well, yes, because if you don't, you're going to get what you've been getting. And then it's like, okay, well, that's uncomfortable, right? Okay, well,
how do I change that?
How do I work through that, you know? And I think for me, at so many times in my life, and maybe it was just how we're raised, you know, I thought, well, I had to have all my ducks in a row before I do X, Y, Z. And what I've learned, and what this book really hits home, is no, you get X, Y, Z by just doing, right? So,
and the ducks will end up in alignment eventually.
Yeah. Or not.
Or they turn into frogs or whatever
right.
animal.
Yeah.
But like being uncomfortable while laying that boundary, like that's something that I have learned over the years. Like, okay, I'm laying a boundary, I'm shaking, whether it's personal or professional, I'm nervous, I'm tapping, I'm taking deep breaths, but I'm still setting the boundary or sending the email. Right? Or doing whatever, and just not trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
Just being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then your example of speaking, eventually, I hope the boundary setting gets easier.
Yeah.
So they say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with the two Jens, my two sidekicks, in a few minutes. That's a Hard No is brought to you by Clever Girl Marketing, my full-service agency specializing in smart, strategic marketing solutions for businesses and nonprofits. Okay, so you're probably wondering, Heather, what's with the podcast about boundaries? Why not marketing? Well, maybe in the future, but for now, it actually does relate, so bear with me here. Smart marketing, strategic marketing, requires knowing what to say no to and why. Businesses and nonprofits get inundated with marketing options and offers every day. We help you cut through all that noise, focus on your specific needs, and develop actionable strategies that are doable and actually make sense. Whether it's websites, SEO, email, social, or traditional channels, we're experienced in all of it. So if you need help figuring out your marketing, visit our website, clevergrowmarketing.com, and get in touch. One of the most valuable parts of this book, Just Do Nothing by Joanna Hardis, is where she talks about resistance behavior types. And this is part of the book where I was like, oh, wait, I do that. Oh. And like you said, it's not having these kinds of behaviors or these traits or whatever, or these kinds of reactions to things doesn't mean we are a certain kind of thing or we have a certain kind of disorder or anything like that. It's just common behaviors people have when they feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I like labels because it simplifies things for me.
It really
right?
helps me
just a this,
understand.
yeah. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I have to remember that, like you said, we all do some of this, right? I mean, everybody needs to resist on some level, and it doesn't
define
mean
you
it.
completely. You're not.
Right.
This is not you. This is a behavior that you're expressing, or the right word is not.
Avoiders and people pleasers. Ding, ding, ding.
I'm on that too. But when I read through it, I didn't feel like I gravitated as much. I mean, I can be, but it wasn't the highest one that in the list.
Yeah, I think it's something I actively been working on, but I know that like that was my default, right? You want to describe what it is?
Oh, like I'm fine shutting down, disconnecting, deflecting, or projecting. So like when the heat is on, avoiders and people pleasers avoid. I've definitely had some of this.
Or just going along to get along.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a hard one because sometimes you need to just go along to get along, right?
Yeah.
Like,
You have to know when
well, and
to compromise
Yeah.
and when not to.
and she would say like, what's the function of my behavior, right? So like, am I going along because I'm trying to avoid something? Then let's talk about that. Am I going along just because I really don't care where we go to lunch and I'm just going to be easy? Okay.
I'd rather everyone be
Yeah.
copacetic and getting
Yeah,
along.
it's not that important to me.
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
that self-awareness
It's when
comes
it's,
in.
and where if it's chronic,
Yes.
then you've got a problem.
Right. Or if you're not doing what you want to do or value by constantly giving in, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next one is crowdsourcers and reassurance seekers. I see this one on social media all the time.
You
This
just need
thing
validation for how you're
happened.
feeling.
Or,
Or your parenting.
yeah,
Good mom if.
yeah, I'm doing this thing, or I even see almost like the Reddit thing. Am I the asshole?
Oh, yes.
Which I enjoy reading.
I
actually.
do enjoy. These are people who have trouble making decisions. They question themselves, and they always like to get second and millionth opinions just to be sure. I definitely know. I'm thinking of some very specific people in my life.
I know people.
And they're
who
like,
do.
they'll repeat the scenario 5 times, and I'm like, oh my God, just make a decision. Like,
Yeah.
But this helps me sympathize and empathize a little bit more, right? Because it's so like, what if I'm wrong? What
Yeah.
if it's the wrong choice? And I get that.
I am one of those people that I don't like. If I have something I'm working through, I will talk about it with 1 or 2 people. I'll talk about it with my spouse, maybe 1 or 2, dear friends or something. But I don't go and talk to millions of
Yeah,
people.
me
I
either.
get exhausted by it, and I just want to like sit on it for a minute, and then I'll come to whatever decision. I have a friend who in their defense, they get into some pretty sticky situations and then want to hash through, and like every conversation's 45 minutes to an hour. And at a couple of times I've gone, well, who else have you talked to about this? And then there's like a list. So they're spending a really inordinate amount of time talking about this with everyone. And I'm like, well, what did they say? And so I've kind of gotten a little impatient with them. And so this kind of helped me kind of feel a little more empathy and be a little more patient, I think.
But then also on the other hand, like,
Right.
Like, get on with it.
If you ask,
but yeah, they have to decide that. You can't decide that for them.
Yeah. Okay, comfort zoners. I could fall into this. This is like,
I definitely do not.
I know I should be, and I talked with Joanna about this a bit. I know I should be physically more active. I should be doing things for my health. I know I should. I'm heavier than I've ever been. I know I want to make sure I don't get cancer again, all those things, right? And I'm doing a lot of the preventative things. But am I exercising as much as I should? No. Am I eating more sugar than I should? Yes. And why? It's fine. There's really no, pain associated with it yet. Although I know it could be down the line. So yeah, I kind of fall into that trap a little bit. Numb outers.
This was me before recovery. I mean,
Yeah.
all me.
So these are people who shop or
For me, that's how I
drink or
I overate.
eat
I
or-
binged and I drank and I smoked some things and I just I watched movies because it was too uncomfortable to live life. Addiction is a different beast,
theme,
but
but yeah.
in looking back, okay, what are some of the reasons why I used the way that I did? It was life is too uncomfortable for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I numbed out completely.
Yeah.
Well, not completely, but
And I think there are people who cope, video gaming all the time, or somehow succumbing to whatever entertainment or whatever, just basically turning off the worries,
right.
putting it in a box and coming over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you know what? I will say, to be really honest, I think I kind of did this with work for a long time. You know,
And that's easy because it's productive.
yeah, and I'm like, I'm building it, I'm hustling, I'm building a business, I'm working 18 hours a day, and then my husband's like, hello, you have a family, hello, are you going to eat dinner? So this is something that it's a little painful for me, like to stop at 6 o'clock and be like, okay, fine, I'll come downstairs and eat dinner. But I'm making myself do it because, I do need to have a life outside
Because
of work.
your why is more important than the discomfort. You want to have those relationships
Yeah,
with your
absolutely.
family.
Yeah.
So you're willing to go through the discomfort of shutting things down at 6, even though your brain's like, wait, there's more work.
Yeah,
You're saying, okay.
the hamster wheel's still going in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's exactly how this works. Like,
Yeah.
okay, and it's probably once you transition and you're hanging with your family,
And
then
I'm
you're like
sitting on the
perfectly
couch
happy.
and I'm like, wow, I'm really tired.
Right.
I didn't realize how tired I was.
right.
Oh, I'm really enjoying this TV show. Like, but
And you're being present
but
in that moment.
but to stop working, it's like, yeah,
it causes you distress,
yeah.
but you're building that muscle.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
Trying. This is a fun one. Dumbo's feather holders. So this is like the magical thinking people.
I got my bracelet. I'm okay. I got my bracelet.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah. What else? How else does that manifest? It's like the crystals and the
I think it could be anything, honestly. I don't
Really?
know that it has to be, you could just.
any of the woo-woo
I feel
stuff.
better
It can be-
when I have
yeah.
my blue sweater on, or you know what I mean, something
Mm-hmm.
like that, where you just feel like my lucky pants, or I don't know.
No,
where
that's
it's
a
like
great point.
you're secured in whatever it is. It doesn't have to be like I mean, not to mean give crystals a bad name, but
No, no,
sometimes
no,
people
yeah.
associate that with being a little farther to one side or something that
yeah.
it's like a little eccentric. But like it could be just in general life. You need X to feel comfortable, so you have to have it, and it becomes a crutch.
Yeah. I also think maybe that like if I only have these things in place first, like these things have to happen and then I can do. That's almost like no.
But it almost like I feel like without those kind of things where it's like you keep adding more to it because it becomes like, oh well, I did all those things quickly and now I'm supposed to do it, and I'm like, or I'm supposed to go do whatever, and you're like, no, I need to do this first too. Like you keep adding to it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work.
Right.
What she says all the time, what you resist persists. So like the more that, like at somebody, like I have panic disorder, so I will still get panic attacks here and there. Get on an airplane, surefire. It's just something I live with. And when I start to fight it, like, oh no, I can't do this, I can't do it, boom, full-blown panic. But I'm like, all right, we're going to have a panic attack. It's cool. I'm feeling the heat. The heat's coming. I'm going to have a panic attack. It's fine. I don't have a panic attack because I'm not fearing the fear.
Really? So
Oh,
you're
yeah.
like naming it that this is how I'm feeling. This
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
It's approaching, and then it kind of.
Sometimes I'm like, bring it on. And then because
Wow,
it's like
that's
I
amazing.
gotta welcome it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's super uncomfortable, and all that intellect and all the whatever knowledge avails me nothing.
Oh sure.
But I gotta welcome it.
When
I
the
gotta be like, here it
feelings come
comes.
in, all the knowledge stuff, all the intellect turns off, right?
Yeah.
And we're making decisions, and that's why this all happens, right? We're making decisions in a different part of our brain that doesn't understand logic.
Right, the amygdala, the
Yeah,
fight
the
or flight.
amygdala. Yeah.
So this is like way off topic, but kind of relates. I feel like in the Divergent movies. I don't know. Did you see those? This is a while ago.
But where I've seen the Divergent movie. I'm
I was a
almost
Hunger Games
55
fan,
now.
so I
Oh,
didn't.
okay. I watched both. I did both.
Okay.
Read and watched both. But
Nice.
the main character, she's able to they put them through these like tests where they hook them up to all kinds of sensors and they put them in these scenarios and it's like they're actually living in them. But she is very easily able to not and she's able to defeat whatever she's put into, and because she can kind of pull herself out and realize that it's not real. Even though everybody else that does them can't do that, and they're baffled by her. But this makes me think of that, where
That's a
you're kind
really
of like
good, yeah,
you're kind of
correlation,
like in the situation, you have to pull back and be like, okay, just let it. And that was one of the things she would do. She would just kind of like calm herself and was able to work through it, and then she was out of it quicker. And I'm like, oh,
So
interesting.
identifying it
Detaching
stepping
a little
back.
Yeah, detaching a little bit.
bit.
Interesting.
That is
Self-
interesting.
Or the
That is the same concept, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're just welcoming
Yeah.
what it is. You're not fighting
Very
it.
cool.
yeah,
Procrastinators.
that's me.
Yeah,
I
me
have
too.
some of that for sure.
Yeah. And it's funny. Sometimes it's little things, you know. And
Yeah, it's like the dumb things that you're like, I just do it, and then you're like, oh, but yeah, I have all these other things, and it's like I find myself in if I something comes in, which is part of another problem. If something comes in, I'm like, I feel the need to just do it right now, because if I don't, then I'm gonna put it off, and I know I'll put it off longer. Like, I mean, it's like the dumbest things. Even like making a phone call sometimes. Like even it's like family members or something where it's like I just need to call them about what the plans are for the, and I put it off.
Do you
And
put
then
it
I'm
do
like,
it in your head though? I'll do it in my head 10 times. Oh, I've called them
Oh
already
yeah,
in my head.
well,
how many
yeah,
times
the
have you
answer-
said that to me? You're like, did I email you back or did I just imagine I
Yeah,
did that?
because I do it in my head, like almost obsessively, and I'm like, just do the.
Right. Yeah, I
thing.
do.
Yeah. Compulsive self-helpers. I do know a few of these. There's always a new diet. There's always a new gimmick. There's always a new workout. There's always a...
But as soon as it gets too uncomfortable, they're out.
Yeah.
It didn't work. I'm not so much that, but I can see.
Yeah.
I used to be this because the anticipation of starting on Monday that gave me that I was comfortable then.
Oh, like
Of
the
the
excitement.
the excitement of it building up to it.
I
But
knew
then-
I was going to make the change on Monday, so I'm okay right now.
And then what happened on Monday?
I don't know.
So on the topic of procrastinators, as a marketer, one of the things I'm always thinking about is how to remove barriers to potential buyers, because I know if I go to do something and it becomes difficult and I'm uncomfortable, I will stop and I'll be like, I'll do this later. So like if someone goes on your website or someone's on your app or whatever the thing is, on your social post, your LinkedIn, whatever, and you say, click here to do this thing or sign up for this free thing, and it suddenly becomes a complicated, difficult thing, then the person's like, yeah, I don't want to do this. And so like this, people don't like to be uncomfortable. People will put off things. And then when people put off things, we forget to do them or follow through. So.
Or you just stress about it forever until you actually do it, and then you're like, oh, why didn't I do that sooner?
Yeah, true. Very true. Okay, good vibes only, no negativity, folks. This is the person who's all about positivity. So this is the toxic good vibes only, and I always rail against sort of the hustle broke culture as a business owner of like, you got to get up at 5 a.m. and you got to jump in the ice water bath and you got to do the thing and use this journal.
Sounds miserable to me.
I
Ice
know.
bath.
And like, how many years did I beat myself up of like, I cannot get up in the morning before 7 a.m. I'm sorry. I cannot. Physically cannot. As you know, I don't like to schedule a meeting before 10 a.m. because I am not coherent.
Yeah.
But how many times have I heard, you just need to work more hours. You just need to do the thing. You got to be doing this and you got to be doing that. And I don't buy it. And I think it makes people feel bad.
Yeah. And when people are like I've gone through some serious things and been told things like, oh, well, you'll be fine. Well, yeah, I mean, of course I'll be fine, but can we just be okay with being sad right now? Like, even when my kids cry, I'm like, it is okay to cry. Or when they watch a movie, both my girls are very empathetic. So, if they're watching a movie and they're crying, they'll be like, Mom, why am I crying to this movie? I'm like, you're supposed to be crying right now to this movie.
You'd be a sociopath if you weren't.
Right.
Mom, what's a sociopath?
Right, yeah. So, yeah, it's okay to be, it's more than okay. It's necessary. How do we know happiness if we don't know sadness?
Right. I think I kind of fall into this category too, and I think it's been a lesson to learn to kind of, especially with the kids too, where it's like, you gotta swoop in and fix it, make it better, make it. You're not sad. You're not. I'm like okay, well, it's okay to be sad as long as you don't there's a phrase about unpacking your suitcase and live there. You know what I mean? Like as long as you work through it and then you get to the other side. Yeah. So I think for me a little bit of that is just feeling like I don't have to be,
It's hard to see your kids hurt.
Or even myself too, get out of it. You're okay. You're fine. You're fine. You're good.
I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
It's almost a form of numbing out and putting things in a box. It's like, I'm only going to feel good. I'm going to turn that off. And I think eventually it catches up with you.
Oh, yeah.
And all you're doing is letting it build up and get bigger and bigger and bigger and worse.
I think that's why stress is so, like such a big thing for people, especially women, because we do keep it inside, and then your body starts to fall apart. I mean, it's got to come out somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think I said this when we talked last time, but like my daughter's funny. She's super witty and whatever, and she was irritated with something, and she was like, "Mom, I don't need your Pinterest post right now," like, because it was like, because I have a lot of phrases and sayings that are probably all these, I don't really have them hanging in my house, but like I'll look at them every once in a while and be like, blah blah blah, try to inspire myself, whatever. And she's like, "I don't need one of your Pinterest posts." Like,
she would love Joanna. Joanna would say, "That's a mug saying." Get your mug saying.
I don't need your damn Pinterest post.
Right. Yeah,
that's so funny. Next one is optimizers. Anyone do that? These are the people who try to avoid ever being uncomfortable or distressed by optimizing every aspect of their life. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and this is, where she talks about, the function. Like, okay, so now I've started to say, all right, am I optimizing this because there's some discomfort, or because I really truly need some efficiency in this area, right? Or am I optimizing because of a story I'm telling myself, like I'm not good enough, or because I truly want to progress toward a goal or a value?
I feel like you guys have both have said you're kind of type A people, and I feel that's very fits in with that type of a personality.
Absolutely.
That kind of like having to make sure everything is perfect and lined up, and
the
I figured it all I've researched.
Or even little things like I'm always trying to optimize my space, my living space, right? And I'm always trying to like reorganize where the food goes and the this goes and the shoes go, and the rest of my family's like, everything was fine. It was fine.
Now I can't find it because you moved it somewhere.
Where are the granola bars? What is happening right now? Why can't I get this thing out of this drawer? You put it in a weird box, like,
Right.
and so everyone else is fine. So I'm like, why am I so controlling about this? And, is there something else I need to be doing? So it's funny.
I'm definitely a sorter. Like, I like things to be in their place, but then, like, even in my office, it's like, it just kind of starts off that way, and I'm really good. Everything's, I'm keeping up with this and that, and then it's like, it falls back, and there's piles of crap everywhere, and I'm just like, I, like, walk past it. So
Stop seeing it, yeah. 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 Micromanagers, and I'm in parentheses, controlling behaviors. Guilty. That's me. We're not talking about abusive relationships or controlling, toxic controlling situations. This is someone who might control their relationship with you so that there is never any discomfort, never any friction, right? I don't know. Maybe this isn't me after all. I'm pretty open. What do you think? How would you define it?
I think I can fall into this. I don't identify that with this as much as the other ones, but I do think, for instance, like if, my daughter does video calls with friends, if I can overhear them, I get very nervous. Like, well, what if they say something mean about somebody? Or what if they say this? Or what if they say that? And it's like, the micromanaging then would be to go in and be like, well, there's no call, like, we're done with the call, or whatever. And, and I've started to back off and notice this a little bit and be like, this is their private conversation. They're 9. They're going to explore things. And nothing has ever happened, by the way. And everybody's being raised, to love, peace, and tolerance, inclusivity, all those good things, right? And if somebody makes a smart aleck joke or whatever, or says my mom's being a pain in the butt, like, it's okay, right? It's okay. I'm just so nervous that what if I'm not raising my kids to be kind and loving adults, right? So it's like that. And I think what some of this says is, okay, they're going to be kids. They may even say something cruel, right? Just let it go.
But
for
hopefully
now.
you're teaching them the skills that they can cope with it, or they know they can come to you.
And it's a private conversation. Yeah. They're joking or whatever. Yeah. I'm just that uncomfortableness of, are they going to be good adults? Like, she's 9, so I think I have a ways to go. But
I think my controlling behavior and micromanaging behavior is I don't want anything bad to happen to my kids or to anyone in my sphere, right? And so I'm always so I have this story, and hopefully my sister-in-law will be okay with this, but I have this beautiful nephew who, when he was younger, was very into dolls. And they happened to be a family collection that he inherited, and so he's just really into them. And he would have dolls all the time. And one time, our whole family went out to a restaurant, and we were waiting for our table, and he was holding a doll, and it had like rainbow hair or something. And this other little boy came up to him and he said, "Is that your doll?" And I'm standing there like, like, what are you gonna say? He said, "Is that your doll?" And my nephew said, "Yeah, that's my doll." And the little boy said, "Is it a mermaid?" And my nephew said, "No." Why? And then the little boy, and I was like literally about to like jump in and like separate, thinking he was going to get bullied. And the little boy said, "Because mermaids are beautiful."
Aww.
And that was a
At
moment.
that point, I would have started crying.
I literally got choked up, and I was like, "Little kids are okay. They've got it right. It's what we do to them." And so it's like I've had to learn to kind of like now with my older adult children, like. One's in college and things happen and, roommates have disagreements and things. And I have to like trust that they'll figure it out. It's not up to me to fix their relationship all the time.
Or they'll,
right?
I have to wait to be asked.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I have an opinion and you should want to hear
and
it.
And I overheard what you were saying or
And
what they were
wise.
saying. And
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not up to me to teach them everything. Sometimes they have to figure it out, right? And then wishful thinkers. This is kind of like if things have to be a certain way for me to be happy, or if only things were this way, then I would be happy, right?
Yeah, I used to do this a lot.
Yeah, and I know people who do this.
Daydreaming.
And it really gets you stuck.
Oh yeah, there are times when in my life where I don't want to get out of bed because I'm just imagining how life should be.
Right.
And I'm like, well, this is not reality. Like, get up and make like what is not working. Like when I start to get into this, which does not happen. Very rarely does this happen. But if I start to daydream, I'm like, okay, what am I unhappy about? Is this something I can control? I'll talk to my trusted friends, right? But like bring it out into the open, bring it out into reality. Because otherwise in my head, I've changed everybody. And of course, they're all doing what I want them to do when I want them to do. Right?
Of course, yeah.
And I'm, 300 pounds thinner just because that's the daydream, right? Or like whatever. It's like, okay, well, let's take this into reality.
Yeah.
Like what's really bothering me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we idealize other people like we talked about before. And I know there was a time in my life where I would do this wishful thinking, if only this, if only, that relationship was like this, or we had this, or whatever. And the way I got around it, I think, was just gratitude, being grateful for what I do have. And even if, my life is imperfect like everyone else's, I'm grateful for what I have. So.
like kind of the control of things you can control. And, yeah.
Now, do we still complain about our spouses to each other? Yes.
No, never. Just kidding.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, do we? I mean,
Or like her,
people
like,
are annoying, but
or she talks about, that she has a client who always thought about college. I found myself doing that. Like, man, if I could just go back. Like, and it's okay.
like a
The glory
redo?
days,
Like a
living
redo?
your
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, mommy and daddy were footing. I was very privileged. My mom and dad paid for stuff and whatever.
It was so much easier then. And,
Yeah, and I think it's okay to reminisce, but you're right. If you get stuck in that and it becomes a way of life,
don't always, yeah.
Yeah.
then
you
miss
never.
what's in front of you.
Yeah, and you never take action or move forward.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also not reality in that like nothing was perfect then. Like
Yeah,
but you
you
idealize
have
things.
fuzzy memory
That's
of
a
what
very
you
good
think.
point.
you
Yeah.
were- yeah. Like they talk about with childbirth, where you remember like, you block out some of the painful stuff and
Right.
remember the wonderful outcome. Like that
Right.
kind of thing.
You forget.
Or there's back to another movie. I think it's Adam Sandler, and I think it's called Click something. It's with a remote.
Oh yeah.
Where he fast forwards all the uncomfortable parts in his life to get to the end, and then he realizes he's like fast forwarded his entire life.
Oh,
kind of
I never saw that one.
Oh, okay.
But now I want to.
Wow.
That's so true.
That's very good. Very,
Yeah.
very good.
Insightful.
Yeah.
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 Adam Sandler. Profound.
Oh yeah.
Who knew? Any last thoughts about this wonderful book by Joanna Hardis?
I just think it's super helpful for anybody who wants to make a change, and finds themselves unwilling or unable for whatever reason, and that it's okay to say, you know what, I'm doing enough over here. It's like you were saying, should I get to the gym? Okay, yeah, okay, well maybe not now.
Maybe
in
not
my
right
life.
now.
Like it's okay, right? I mean,
I just, there's always,
okay.
to me, it's such, always comes into my head with any of these kind of topics is like a balance of, you know, where you're at and what you're doing and where is that balance? Are you too far over here where you're stressed about this and then you swing back to the other side where you're, you know, maybe not setting boundaries or whatever, you know, just kind of, there needs to be a balance of all in your life.
Yeah. I just think it's helpful, you know, again, I approached this thinking it wouldn't really apply to me. And then I really, you know, it really helped me identify some of the behaviors I'm doing. And there are things I want to do in my life. And am I getting in my own way? And so like being able to recognize those things. And I think a lot of people just like get stuck ruminating and worrying. And if you're one of those people that find yourself, you know, kind of in that situation, this could be very helpful.
Yeah,
So-
for sure. And it's easy. It's not. Like
Oh
you
yeah,
were
this
saying
is a quick
earlier.
read.
Yeah, and there's little questions. Like it's just easy.
Yeah, little exercises. You can see on my little flags, I have little
Yeah.
exercises I'm going to do.
And she's funny.
Yeah, she is funny. So thank you, Joanna Hardis, for a wonderful book. And thank you, Jen and Jen, for
Thanks for
coming on
having us.
again
Yes,
and letting
thank
me
you.
rope you into this again. And you're always wonderful to talk to. And we hope you'll read it. And we'll be announcing soon what the next book club book will be. Thanks, everyone. That's a Hard No is a production of Clever Girl Marketing, my little agency in Cleveland, in partnership with our friends at Evergreen Podcasts. Many thanks to our amazing team, including Maura Del Rosario, our production and marketing coordinator, Noah Fouts, our amazing producer, editor, and composer who wrote our theme music and performed it with his band, The Big Leagues, and our new video producer and editor, Kay Holmberg. You can find show notes and resources on our website, and you can find other fun stuff on our socials. We're Hard No Podcast. Find your no, then say it with me.